She thought he was just her neighbor, until his eyes glowed in the dark. Elena Hart stood in front of her new house, hands on her hips, taking in the quiet street. The move had been exhausting, but this place promised a fresh start. The neighborhood looked peaceful. Tall trees lining the sidewalks, trimmed lawns, and houses that gleamed in the late afternoon sun. Everything seemed normal except for the massive dark mansion that loomed next door. It was built of black stone with long iron gates and windows so tinted they almost looked like mirrors. Elena hadn't seen anyone come in or out since the movers dropped her boxes off that morning. Still, she felt eyes on her, a weight that made the back of her neck tingle. When she turned to look, a shadow shifted behind one of the upper windows. She frowned but shrugged it off. Maybe the neighbor was just curious about the new arrival. Inside, her house smelled faintly of new paint and dust. She unpacked a few boxes, humming softly to herself, trying to fill the silence. By nightfall, she was too tired to cook and settled for a cup of tea. As she sipped, her gaze drifted back to the mansion. One of its lights was on now, a faint golden glow from a single room upstairs. She thought she saw movement, a tall figure crossing the light briefly before the curtain fell shut. The next morning, she stopped by the small grocery store in town. The cashier, an older woman with kind eyes, struck up a conversation. "You moved into the Lane house, didn't you?" the woman asked, scanning her items. "Yes, yesterday," Elena replied. "It's lovely. Though my neighbor's place is different." The woman's smile faded a little. "You mean the Blackwood estate?" "That's the one. Big place. Doesn't seem like anyone lives there." "Oh, someone does," the cashier said quietly. "Lucien Blackwood. Owns most of the businesses around here. Keeps to himself. I'd stay clear if I were you." "Why's that?" Elena asked, amused by the sudden change in tone. The woman hesitated, then shrugged. "People say strange things. That he's dangerous. That something bad follows him." Elena gave a small laugh. "Rumors always find rich people. I'll be fine." The woman didn't answer, only handed her the change with a look that made Elena uneasy. That night, Elena stayed up late arranging her bookshelves. When she finally stepped outside to toss some boxes into the bin, she realized how still the neighborhood was. The air was heavy, the kind of quiet that pressed on the chest. From the corner of her eye, she saw someone standing by the fence that separated her yard from the mansion. She froze. The man was tall, his frame broad, his face partly hidden in the dark. The faint porch light caught his eyes. They glinted like gold for an instant before he turned away. "Can I help you?" Elena asked, her voice steady though her pulse quickened. He stopped, then stepped closer. In the light she could see him properly. He was striking, sharp jawline, hair dark as midnight, a calmness in his face that felt practiced, almost unnatural. "Your car," he said. His voice was low, deep. "It's leaking oil. You should get it checked before you drive again." "Oh." She blinked, thrown off. "I didn't notice. Thank you." He nodded once, his gaze lingering on her longer than felt casual. Then, as if remembering something, he added, "Don't stay out here after dark. The woods aren't safe." Before she could ask why, he turned and disappeared through the side gate of the mansion. Back inside, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Lucien Blackwood, she guessed. The dangerous neighbor everyone warned her about. He didn't seem like a monster, just distant. Maybe lonely. Still, something about his eyes unsettled her. Later that night, the power flickered. She sighed and went to the window to check if the other houses had gone dark too. Across the yard, the lights in Lucien's mansion were still on. The tall windows glowed dimly, and in the front yard, just for a moment, she saw movement. Something big was pacing near the gate. Elena squinted, trying to see through the shadows. The figure wasn't human. It moved too fast, too smoothly. She caught the shape of it, a huge wolf, its fur black as ink, its eyes catching the moonlight in the same golden shimmer she had seen earlier. Her breath caught. The animal stopped and turned its head toward her as if sensing her gaze. They locked eyes. The air felt thick, heavy, like the world itself had paused. Then it bolted into the woods, vanishing without a sound. Elena backed away from the window, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. It had to be a dog. Or maybe her mind was just playing tricks on her. That was more believable than a wolf roaming a quiet suburban street. But the memory of those golden eyes refused to fade. She didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of the house, Every rustle of leaves outside made her sit up and listen. She told herself she wasn't scared, just cautious. Still, part of her wondered if Lucien Blackwood's warning hadn't been a suggestion but a command. By morning she decided she needed to talk to him again. Maybe there really were wild animals nearby. Maybe he could tell her more. She glanced toward the mansion as she locked her door to leave for work. The gate was open and for a second she saw him standing on the balcony, dressed in black, looking down at her. He didn't wave or smile, but somehow she felt the weight of his attention. A strange pull tightened in her chest, one she couldn't explain. It wasn't fear, not entirely. It was curiosity, sharp, insistent, and dangerous. She tore her gaze away and walked down the street. Behind her, Lucien Blackwood watched in silence, his golden eyes darkening as he whispered to himself, "You shouldn't have come here, Elena." The next morning, Elena couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen the night before. No matter how much she tried to convince herself it was a trick of the light or some oversized dog, her mind kept circling back to those golden eyes. And when she remembered Lucien's warning about staying inside after dark, she knew she needed answers. Around noon she found herself standing at the edge of his gate, staring up at the towering mansion. She hesitated, half expecting someone to appear and tell her to leave, but the front door opened before she could knock. Lucien stood there, wearing a black shirt rolled up at the sleeves, his hair slightly disheveled as though she had interrupted him. "Elena," he said, her name sounding strange and deliberate on his tongue. "What are you doing here?" She straightened her shoulders. "I came to ask you something. Last night I saw something in your yard. It looked like a wolf." He said nothing, his face unreadable. For a moment she thought he might laugh, but instead his jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have been looking," he said finally, his tone calm but sharp. "I live next door," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's kind of hard not to notice when there's a massive animal running around the neighborhood." Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe fear. He stepped closer. "Whatever you think you saw, forget it. It's safer for you that way." "Safer?" she repeated, her brow furrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" He didn't answer. Instead, he moved past her toward the gate, his presence commanding without effort. "Go home, Elena." She wanted to push, to demand an explanation, but there was something final in his tone that made her pause. Still, she wasn't the type to back down easily. "You know," she said quietly, "you're not doing a great job at convincing me to stay away." For a brief second, something softened in his expression, a hint of frustration mixed with something she couldn't name. Then he turned and disappeared into the house without another word. Days passed after that, and though she tried to keep her distance, their paths crossed more than once. He was everywhere she didn't expect him to be. Outside when she came home late, walking down the street just as she left for work, even stopping by once to warn her about a faulty gas line the maintenance team had missed. Each time, his voice carried the same restrained calm, but there was always something in his eyes that unsettled her. One afternoon she came home to find her landlord arguing with someone at the front porch. The man was shouting, demanding an extra fee for some repair that wasn't her fault. Elena tried to reason with him, but he stepped too close, his voice rising. Before she could react, Lucien appeared behind her, silent as a shadow. "Is there a problem?" The landlord froze at the sound of his voice. Lucien's calm tone carried a quiet threat, one that needed no volume to be understood. The man stammered something about misunderstanding and hurried away. Elena turned to him. "You didn't have to do that." "I don't like seeing people talk to you like that," he said simply. She looked at him for a long moment, unsure of what to say. There was no arrogance in his tone, no attempt to impress her. Just a quiet certainty, like protecting her was instinct, not choice. That evening the sky broke open with a sudden storm. Thunder rolled through the neighborhood and rain came down in sheets. Elena was outside trying to bring in the last of her laundry when a strong gust nearly knocked her off balance. She grabbed at the railing but slipped on the wet grass, landing hard on one knee. Pain shot up her leg, and before she could get up, someone's hand gripped her arm. "Are you hurt?" It was Lucien again, soaked to the skin, his shirt clinging to his chest, water running down his face. He didn't wait for an answer, just helped her to her feet and guided her toward his mansion before she could protest. Inside, the warmth hit her immediately. The interior was nothing like she expected. Elegant but dark, filled with bookshelves, heavy curtains, and faint traces of old wood and smoke. He handed her a towel and gestured toward the fireplace. Sit. You're shaking. I'm fine, she said, though her voice betrayed a tremor. He knelt slightly to meet her eyes. You're not. Their gazes held, and for the first time, the guarded expression he always wore slipped. There was something raw there, a kind of hunger that went beyond attraction, something deeper, older. The air between them felt charged. But then his hand trembled slightly, his jaw tightening as if he was fighting something unseen. He stood abruptly and stepped back. You need to leave. Her heart skipped. Did I do something wrong? He shook his head. No. I did. I shouldn't have brought you here. Lucien, she began, you don't have to pretend I don't see what's happening. You're hiding something. Just tell me the truth. For a long moment he said nothing. Then in a low voice that almost sounded like defeat he said, I'm not like you. I'm not even what you think I am. Before she could respond he turned away, gripping the edge of the fireplace so tightly his knuckles went white. His voice grew rough, strained. I'm cursed, Elena. The thing you saw that night, it wasn't a dog or a wild animal. It was me. Her mouth went dry. You're saying you're a werewolf, he finished for her. I lost control years ago. I tried to bury that part of me, but it didn't die. It just waits. He should have felt fear. Instead, all she felt was a strange calm. His confession didn't sound like the words of a monster. It sounded like a man confessing a sin he could never undo. Then why did you move here? She asked softly. He turned his head slightly, his golden eyes catching the firelight. Because of you. Her heart stopped. I knew you'd come eventually, he continued quietly. I didn't know when or how, but I could feel it. You're the only one who can end this curse. You're my mate. Elena stared at him, her pulse racing. That's not possible. We've just met. Not in this life, he said, his voice low. But our souls, they remember. He stepped closer and the world seemed to shrink around them. Every time I try to stay away, something pulls me back. You're the one thing that keeps the beast inside me from winning. Elena's breath came out shaky. She didn't know whether to run or reach for him. Everything about what he said defied reason, but deep down some part of her believed it. The way her chest tightened when he looked at her, the way his voice settled into her bones, it all made a terrible kind of sense. He stopped just a breath away. But I can't claim you, he said, his tone breaking. Because if I lose control again, you'll be the one who pays for it. Before she could reply, thunder cracked outside and the lights flickered. He turned away sharply, leaving her staring at the door that led to the dark hall. When she finally stepped out into the rain again, her thoughts were spinning. Lucien Blackwood was no longer just the dangerous man next door, he was something far more complicated. And against every warning, she already knew she wouldn't be able to stay away. For the next few days, Elena barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lucien's face, the look in his eyes when he'd told her the truth. Part of her wanted to forget it all and pretend none of it was real, but that wasn't possible anymore. Every sound outside, every flicker of light in the woods behind the houses made her heart race. She started keeping her curtains closed, yet she couldn't stop thinking about him. He had tried to warn her, to push her away, but there was something between them neither could ignore. Late one afternoon, as she sat on her porch with a cup of tea, a car pulled into her driveway. A man she didn't recognize stepped out, tall, confident, with an easy smile and light brown hair. He looked like someone who didn't belong in a quiet neighborhood like this. Hi, he said warmly. You must be Elena. I'm Ethan. I used to live around here. Thought I'd say hello to the new neighbor. His charm put her at ease, though something about his eyes, pale gray and watchful, made her uneasy. They talked for a while. He asked polite questions about her move, her work, her house. But then his tone shifted slightly when he glanced toward Lucien's mansion. Have you met the man next door? Ethan asked, his voice casual. Yes, Elena said carefully. He chuckled softly. He doesn't usually make friends. You must be special. The way he said it made her stomach tighten. You know him well? Used to, Ethan replied. A long time ago. Before he decided to disappear from the world. There was bitterness in his voice now. He looked straight at her and added, You should be careful with him. He's not what he seems. Whatever story he's told you, it's not the truth. Elena frowned. And what's the truth then? Ethan's smile faded. He's dangerous. He wasn't cursed. He cursed himself. He betrayed the people who trusted him and they paid the price. I should know. I was one of them. Her hands tightened around her cup. You're saying you were part of his pack? He nodded. His beta. His right hand. Until he turned on us. Elena wanted to dismiss him, to tell him to leave, but his words planted a seed of doubt she couldn't ignore. After he left, she tried calling Lucien, but he didn't answer. That night she saw lights moving around his mansion, not the steady glow of lamps but flashes like shadows darting through the windows. Something was wrong. By morning the unease in her chest had turned into fear. She went to the gate of his mansion calling his name but no one answered. As she turned to leave she felt someone grab her arm. She spun around ready to pull away but it was Lucien. He looked different, tired, tense, his shirt half-buttoned, his eyes darker than usual. "What are you doing here?" he asked sharply. "I came to see if you're all right," she said. "Someone came to see me yesterday, Ethan. He said you betrayed your pack." Lucien froze. For a long moment he didn't move or speak. Then he looked away, his jaw tightening. "You shouldn't have spoken to him." "So it's true," she demanded. "You killed them." He met her gaze, pain flickering behind his eyes. "I didn't kill them, Elena. But I couldn't save them either. I lost control that night. I tried to stop it but the beast inside me." He stopped, taking a deep breath. "Ethan blames me and he's right too. But you have to stay away from him. He'll use you to get to me." Before she could reply, a low growl echoed from somewhere nearby. Lucien's expression changed instantly. He pushed her behind him just as something crashed through the trees. A dark shape followed by more. It was them. Wolves, at least half a dozen, tearing through the yard, eyes glowing red. Ethan walked behind them, his human form calm, a cruel smirk on his face. "You always did like playing the hero, Lucien," he said, his voice cold. "But this time there's no one left to save you." "Get inside," Lucien told Elena quietly. "No," she said, shaking her head. "I'm not leaving you." His eyes flashed gold for a brief second, the beast inside pushing against his control. "Please, Elena. Go." But Ethan didn't give her a chance. He gave a short whistle and the wolves lunged forward. Lucien moved faster than she thought possible, meeting them head-on. His body shifted mid-motion, bones cracking, muscles expanding, until the massive black wolf she had seen before stood where he'd been. The fight was brutal. Growls, snapping jaws, and the sound of claws tearing through flesh filled the air. Lucien fought like a creature possessed, protecting her even as he was outnumbered. Ethan moved through the chaos, his own eyes gleaming as he pulled a silver blade from his coat. He struck when Lucien was distracted, the blade sinking deep into his side. The wolf let out a low, pained growl before collapsing to one knee. "Lucien!" Elena screamed, running forward. Ethan caught her wrist. "You don't understand," he hissed. "He's the reason we're all cursed. He deserves this." She yanked her hand free. "No one deserves to die like this." Ethan raised the blade again, but before he could strike, Lucien surged forward despite the wound, knocking him back. They crashed to the ground, the knife skidding away. Lucien's teeth sank into Ethan's shoulder, forcing a scream from him. The other wolves scattered as their leader fell. When the fight ended, the yard was silent except for the sound of the rain and Lucien's ragged breathing. He shifted back to his human form, blood covering his chest. He sank to the ground beside her. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. "I told you I'd hurt you." Elena dropped to her knees beside him, tears mixing with the rain. "You didn't hurt me. You saved me." He smiled faintly, though his skin was pale. "Not enough." "Don't say that," she pleaded. "You're not going anywhere." She pressed her hands against his wound, desperate to stop the bleeding. Her tears fell onto his skin, warm and trembling. The moment they touched him, a faint glow spread across his chest, soft and golden. Lucien's eyes widened. The light grew brighter, wrapping around them both. She felt a rush of warmth, a pulse that went deeper than her heartbeat. The glow faded and the wound was gone. Lucien took a shaky breath and looked at her in disbelief. "The bond, it's real." Elena touched his face gently. "You said I could break your curse." "You did," he said quietly. "But I never expected to survive it." They sat there for a while, surrounded by the quiet aftermath of the fight. The storm had stopped. The sun was rising, turning the wet grass to gold. Lucien looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. You were never in danger from me, Elena. The danger was what I'd become without you. She smiled through her tears. Then don't push me away again. He reached for her hand and held it, his grip firm but gentle. I won't. The world around them felt still, calm in a way neither of them had known for years. And as the first light of morning touched his face, she realized that the man everyone feared was no monster at all. He was simply a man who had been waiting for someone to bring him back to life. Stay tuned for more Alpha Billionaire stories. Like, share and subscribe so you never miss one.